Live here.
Live!
But we don't have to necessarily know what that means.
What's the someday of blank?
I don't
there's
know
a
that we
reason
want to-
this story happens now.
Ladies and gentlemen, the movie writes itself. Ooh. Well,
I'm still streaming. How do I stop streaming? No! Hello.
happy Monday.
Happy Monday. I've spilled hot coffee on my pants.
What?
Yes.
That's not fun.
Breaking news. Jake spills hot coffee on pants. Ben concerned.
That is not fun. Yeah, I am.
Not fun.
I'm very concerned. I hope you didn't burn anything important there.
That's right.
Okay, good. As long as we're clear on that.
By that much. Yeah.
Yikes. Well, welcome everyone to Ben and Jake Write a Movie.
Hello.
It's Monday, November 14th, and this is episode 35
Wow, that's amazing.
of our podcast.
That's amazing.
And we are excited to be here. This has been really, really fun.
I've been thinking about
yesterday-
this script a lot, actually. It's interesting. I've been really just when I've been away, just thinking, I'm excited to get to the next stage. Not that I'm not that I'm wanting to rush that by any means, but just really looking forward to writing this movie. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, I think it's good to keep that going.
Yeah.
I think if you stop wanting to write the movie, there might be problems.
Yeah.
But interesting, this has been a really fascinating experiment because with only doing an hour a day and sometimes not even an hour, and nowadays only about 45 minutes, it's really required some kind of mental, I don't know what the right word is, but like this ability to keep it fresh, even though we're not like spending 4 or 5 hours a day on it.
Well, it's interesting because we were breaking story for something else just before lunch.
Yeah.
And there was a moment kind of towards the end where we just kind of went, because it just kind of, the conversation had reached its point, it kind of fizzled out, etc.
About 3 hours.
Yeah, of course we chatted for 3 hours, absolutely. But it is just interesting to have. We should do this just this focused time of going. Okay, here's just what we're doing for this. Just doing it. And you're being recorded doing it.
And you're being recorded. Oh my gosh, yes, that keeps us very focused and relatively clean.
Yeah, I don't normally look half as good as I do, and I don't look that great.
So. Anyway, today we are going to keep going in our outline where we're in Act 2. But before we do that, is there a topic that we want to discuss for about 15 minutes prior to jumping into the outline? I mean, there's a lot that
I've been reading a lot of screenplays recently. I've been reading a lot of screenplays by emerging writers or writers whom we know, and also just reading screenplays because it's something that I think that you should always do. It's interesting. Again, coming back to Stephen King, I'm going to be talking about him a lot. Whenever I'm reading a book, Ben's just like, you're always talking about. But one of the things he says is,
it's not the book he's reading; it's Warhammer. So
exactly, it's one or the other. It's one or the other. But he was just saying, as a novelist, like you should always be reading novels, and likewise for screenwriters, I think you should always be watching movies, which I think most people do, and television. But there's a difference between watching a movie and watching a movie and think and engaging with it. And I mean, it's in some ways it almost sometimes can ruin a movie because you are so, I see what they did there. I mean, perhaps that's not great writing because you are aware of what they do. But also, again, I do think it's good to read to it. And I'm very guilty of not having done this in a really long time. I haven't done it in a very long time. And it's one of the things that I've been trying to do more of. I think it's important for multiple reasons. I think it is constantly teaching you about what works. It also shows you perhaps sometimes what doesn't work. It can reinforce why you do things the way you do them, and can also offer insights into new and interesting ways of doing things. I read a line in a screenplay the other week that I really liked. That just made me kind of go, "Oh, this was great!" And it was describing a coast in Italy, and it said, "This place is so beautiful it defies a scene description." And it made me smile because it knew it was in a script, and it was just and I got it, and it was just like a little thing like that. So we're going to go, oh, that's a clever way of doing something.
Sure.
You know, I feel like there was another one in Dave's script that we read recently as well that was describing a character. I just went, oh, that's just so funny, you know, and great, and little pithy, fun moments like that. So I've been finding that to be very interesting. Just to connect with screenplay format on a regular basis. And again, I would just, you know, one of the things that I always like that Scott Myers says, he runs the Blacklist blog, is, it's watch movies, read screenplays, write pages. And that's how you can become a professional, because it's just going to constantly reinforce and be teaching you. I kind of think there's something about being perhaps an eternal student of.
Sure.
You know?
So it's more obviously more of a craft thing than a career thing, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think it's What exactly do you mean by that? Like,
these conversations are usually business related, and when you started, you said, "Oh, I've been reading a lot of screenplays lately." I didn't realize that was the
Well, I think it just comes down to I mean, I guess perhaps it's more of a crafty business craft thing than a business thing. I've just been finding it to be interesting lately,
but that's okay.
I
have not. Well, I won't say I haven't read screenplays lately. I've read quite a few
several
screenplays lately, either for work or for whether it's ours or whether it's things that we're looking at potentially producing. It's interesting. I think that there is a way to read a screenplay and have your kind of producer hat on, or your writer hat on, or your reader hat on, and there's kind of three different kind of ways to almost look at a script. And actually, I'm going to bring this around to the business side of things, because reading screenplays is part of our job. It is on a regular basis. We get sent screenplays to read. We have to read over our own screenplays all the time. Sometimes we're going back and rereading scripts that we wrote years ago to see if they're worth revisiting. And I think that there is truly different ways to read a script.
And something that we've talked about a little bit on this podcast too is about at what stage is the screenplay. And by that, I mean, and one of the things that we always say is you are always writing it for the stage it's at then.
Right.
So that might be, we're trying to really get you into the hook of this incredibly interesting concept for this movie. Perhaps early on. Whereas later on, it might be, we're trying to cater to something else. You know? I'll also say something that I think is interesting about reading screenplays. Unlike reading novels and unlike watching movies, is screenplays are not the final product. That's not, screenplays aren't written to be just consumed. They're the blueprints of a film. You need only look at, a non-production draft of a screenplay and then watch the movie and go, oh wow, it's very different, and there's education in that as well. And you can see, why did they do that? It's interesting to do.
What do you think? So when we get sent a screenplay, for either, probably rewrite.
Let's say it was an open writing assignment.
Writing assignment, what hat do you use first when you read that script?
It's interesting. I personally, and it might be different for you, I always view it from just the pure I was going to say the pure kind of writer's perspective, but what do I mean by that? I suppose I just go, I look at it, I read it, And as I'm reading it, I guess I am trying to identify what's working and what's not while I'm reading it. I'm trying to make notes on, do I like certain characters? Do things make logical sense? Do I believe them? Do I care? Am I shocked? Are there turns I wasn't expecting? Like really engaging in the story of it.
Do you think that
for me,
like if we were going to send a script to anyone, a producer, a buyer, anyone, how would we want them to read our script?
Good. These are good questions.
Because I think, and I'm just observing this now through this conversation.
Yeah.
I think that if we were going to send a script to a buyer, we would want them to just read it as a movie, hopefully visualizing it in their mind and not analyzing it too much, but just, do they enjoy it? Do they like the characters? Are they chuckling out loud, or are they
emotionally engaged?
Oh my gosh, this was so fast. Is the pacing fun? Is the moment that they're in exciting? Are they feeling anything while they're reading it? And it's interesting to kind of observe, like, that is one version of reading. But I think I probably do the same, where when we get sent a script, and this is partly practical and partly maybe just from not really thinking about it in these terms. But I also read with kind of my writer / producer hats on, going, why was I sent this? What is it that they need a rewrite on? A lot of times that doesn't come with context, which is very strange.
And that's it, isn't it? Is that a lot of the time is.
And you're going, like this has happened to us actually, 3 times at least this year, where we get sent a script and they go, hey, take a look at this and tell us if it piques your interest. And we're like, what are we looking for? I mean, honestly, are we, what do they want? And I think that what that does actually is it almost potentially makes us jaded towards the script before we've actually consumed it, without thinking about it from a kind of picking it apart standpoint. It's like, I always say, there's certain people who can just watch a movie and enjoy it, and then there's certain people who feel the need to just pick it apart the entire time, and it's like, you're never going to enjoy anything if you just pick it apart the whole time. And maybe, and yet it's extra time, so that's the hard part. But maybe reading a script purely for the experience of the script would be an interesting way to absorb one of those first, to go, what did I respond to?
Totally. One of the things, when I used to be an actor, I worked with this wonderful director who said, when you read a script, this was obviously from an acting point of view, said you should read it all the way through, and then without stopping, you should turn back to page 1 and read it again. So actually in one sitting, you read it twice. Wow. And it's actually really interesting. And I did it, I believe, with Romeo and Juliet. And you see things the second time around that you didn't see the first time, because you didn't know that they were going to be important.
Right.
Oh, that scene is a setup for that. But when I read it the first time, I didn't pay attention because I didn't know that I was being told to pay attention to it. And maybe it's good that you aren't being told to pay attention to it. That's a great setup. You shouldn't feel like something is a setup. You shouldn't walk into a room and see a gun on a wall and go, that's definitely going to get shot in Act 3.
Right.
It should be a subtle thing. But I've actually thought about doing that with screenplays recently, about literally reading it all the way through, stopping, and going straight back to start and reading it again. The first time being an experiential thing of just absorbing this screenplay for what it is, and then looking at it with perhaps a more acute mind.
It's a great concept in theory. I can't imagine myself ever sitting down for 4 to 5 hours straight and just reading. That ain't ever going to happen.
Yeah.
So I'm lucky to get through a whole screenplay in one sitting. which is what I would prefer to always do. But 9 times out of 10, it takes me 2 sittings just to get through the script.
Sure. Perhaps it's then just doing it like one day after the next.
Yeah. I think that there's something beneficial to reading a script without bias and then trying to then go, okay, now I'm going to read it for the analytical side, but I'm reading it with already the pre-knowledge of what exists. So I don't have to pay attention quite in the same way. I can look at things and isolate them and compartmentalize them without losing the experience and the flow of the actual movie itself.
Absolutely.
You know, I think about when we've worked with either producers or executives and they'll bring up a note or they'll say something and you go, well, that's in the script.
That's right. That happens all the time
on page 20. And of course you don't want to like call people out on that, but really what that means to me is that they either read it too fast, didn't really finish it, read just the dialogue, which is the worst thing ever. And I hope any executive that ever watches this does not do that. But or they just read it with an analytical eye and not they didn't absorb it once and then analyze it. And I think that everybody has a limited amount of time. I mean, that's the truth, right? So you send your script to a producer. Are they going to read it twice before getting back to you? I don't know.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because what I'm talking about earlier about, like, say for example, a setup. If you have to get good at, I think, making sure that readers know what's important. And this was a note we had early on from one of our executives at Sony that was talking about, don't give somebody a name and deeply describe them unless they're going to be important to your script.
Yes.
Just call them Farmer One. Don't call him Farmer John. Because if I call him Farmer John, I'm going, oh, Farmer John's going to come back. He's important.
Right.
Whereas if it's just Farmer One, I go, I can read this with the context that it's written, which is you are a small part that might come in and push some information out to the character.
But I don't really need to remember you. I might need to remember what you say, but I don't really
And that can be true, I think, of any moments in your script. If a moment isn't playing or somebody missed something, again, from the aspect of responsibility, okay, you missed that. What do I need to do? And we call that hanging a lantern.
Yes.
How can I hang a lantern on this moment so that you, the reader, pay attention to it? And maybe it's underlining it. Maybe it's holding it.
Maybe it's separating it onto its own line.
Probably its own page where it's the only line on the page.
Right. Yes. Don't miss this. But yeah, I mean, it's a good point. It's funny. On Reddit, which I've just recently discovered, and there's a screenwriter who actually was asking an interesting question just like that, which was, can I just name this person? I'll use Farmer John as an example. They're only in a couple of scenes, and I want him to just be known as a farmer, so that's what he is just a farmer.
Right.
I'm using Farmer John. And I didn't actually get a chance to reply. Plenty of other people did. But, the answer is yes. You can just call someone Farmer John, or you can just call someone the farmer.
The farmer,
Farmer One.
That's
whatever you want. In fact, Farmer John might even be too descriptive because
that's what I was saying is that actually John is the naming of someone and farmer is not.
Yes. Sorry. Yes, I misunderstood. Yes. No, just calling a character farmer can be actually very helpful in determining which characters are your primary cast. And again, people read with different hats on.
Absolutely right.
If I'm reading a script as an executive, depending on the stage, I might be reading it with an eye for budget. And every named character is going to ping something in my mind going, and someone else we have to pay.
Then you're trying to keep track of them too.
That's the other thing, yes.
You are being told if somebody has a name, oh, they're important, I need to keep track of them. What scenes they turn up in? Where were they? Whereas if they're not, I go, it's okay. I can just read the dialogue and I don't need to fully pay attention to what's going, I mean, say fully pay attention, but like this character isn't monumental.
That character can be in more than one scene, but if they're just a tertiary character that isn't someone that I have to track, if they're not someone with an arc or someone with a deep relationship to one of our protagonists, then we don't necessarily want people spending their energy trying to remember, oh, where was Farmer John?
Absolutely right.
You know, like nobody cares. And so, I think that's a good point. And I think that when reading scripts, you know, what hat you're wearing and when you're reading them also definitely matters.
Absolutely. So,
you know, great.
Anyway, there you go. That's a little.
There you go. Reading screenplays.
Reading screenplays.
Yes. Great. Now, speaking of screenplays,
go ahead.
We don't have any actual screenplay to read, but we do have some outlining to do.
We do have some. I want to revisit a conversation that we were having this morning, but with regards to this movie.
Sure.
The conversation we were having this morning was about villains.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've been referencing a lot the Terminator movies, in which James Cameron created one of the most iconic villains in cinema-going history. And we're still talking about him, almost 40 years later? You know,
how many movies? 5, 6 movies?
Yeah, you know. And, you know, Arnie in that first film is so great. And who's the actor who plays the T-1000? Michael Patrick, Patrick something. Michael?
Something Patrick. Robert Patrick.
Robert Patrick. Yes, there you go. You know, you remember? I can. You know, have you seen this boy? Chills. You know, great. Just these great villains, and of course, great movies have great villains, and so particularly in action style movies. And so, I'm just wondering whether or not we should just have a little slightly deeper conversation about Zod and what it's and is there a way to make him more menacing, to make him really, I mean, he already does have, let's just talk about him just briefly if we can, does already have a history with our lead character, which I like, and a very kind of, I'll say painful history, but there is, you know, they were close at one point or another, and then she basically betrayed him.
Sure.
And tried to mess up his plans that he thought she was on board with. And then, for all intents and purposes, kind of tried to kill him. And managed to get away. I wonder if... So anyway, that's the setup that we have currently.
Right.
In what way is he a good villain currently? And are there ways that we can make him a better villain? Are there ways that he can really harm or hinder our hero's progress in a meaningful and sometimes potentially emotional way? And now that we're getting into this part of Act 2, one of the things that we had talked about the other week is what's going to happen when Charlize gets back home.
Sure.
So I just find it to be interesting as well.
I mean, here's a question for you. The other movie that we reference in regards to this is Midnight Run.
Correct.
In that movie, doesn't really feel like there is a one central bad guy.
So, but what's interesting is that you have these two opposing forces.
Yeah.
One is the FBI, who are also after the Duke.
Yeah.
And the other is the mob. And the mob is run by the guy who chased Jack Walsh out of town.
Sure.
Made him leave. So he does have a deep history with our lead character. And ultimately, the story becomes, from the midpoint, how to use the Duke's info to take that guy down.
Okay.
And
would you say that he is the villain of that movie?
I would say he's the villain. Right. If I was going to choose one singular villain, I would say that he is the singular. He is
that movie, yeah.
Yeah, he is the Emperor who is behind the scenes for a lot of it. He's not in it all the time, but you see his forces.
Yeah.
You know, so in the bail bonds office, there's a guy who's intercepting all the information from Jack and feeding it back to the mob, and they're doing stuff with that information.
Okay.
Now,
okay. So in that case, there's multiple opposing forces. There's one villain that is a slightly bigger presence because of a past relationship, and thus they kind of take the main villain spot.
Yeah.
Back to your question about the Terminator, though, I think that what's interesting about the Terminator as a villain is that he actually isn't complex.
He's not
at all.
I agree.
He doesn't change tactics.
No,
really.
He doesn't.
I mean, one time he actually, that's not true. He does pretend to be a voice in both movies.
Yeah, sure. He impersonates someone close to them.
In the second movie, he actually impersonates the physical body of someone.
Right.
But for the most part, what is he doing? He's coming for you with guns.
Yeah. It's very simple.
It's very simple. And that really, he is, it's got a bit of a slasher movie villain style to
it. Does.
Right?
Yeah, it does.
He doesn't speak that much. In the first movie, he barely speaks at all. I mean, there's I bet he has 5 lines, right? And even in the first movie, you don't see that much of the stuff on the screen. It's all the second movie is much more complex with the screen. I think that the stakes that villain creates, and because he seems like an unstoppable force, is what makes him a great villain.
I agree. Yeah.
A personal connection. Right. He doesn't have a personal connection to either of them.
Completely.
He has a singular goal.
Yeah.
And he is relentless.
Yeah.
And will plow through whatever he has to plow through in order to do it. And because that goal is to kill the hero.
Yeah.
That's big stakes.
I remember watching some of the behind the scenes of it. And there's a moment, it's when he's in the parking lot looking for them. And he was describing what he was trying to do with his face. And he said, I imagined that I was just like a shark hunting for my prey. And it's almost like his eyes don't move. They stay in the same position in his head. He's not looking around like that. It was just but even thinking about it, you've got him, Jaws, and the alien, and even Predator to a certain degree. Very simple, clean desires, goals.
Right.
No emotional, no remorse. This is what I'm doing. But and in that sense, totally.
Jason Voorhees.
Yeah. And then what makes those villains formidable and scary is that they have there's no reasoning. There's no reasoning with any of them.
Correct.
Not one time.
And they all feel stronger and more dangerous.
Yes.
Than the people that we are rooting for.
That's a very good point. So I want to come back to the prologue moment for a second. And I want to make sure that this prologue moment feels really dangerous. Because at the moment, Charlize wins. Now, we need her to win because we need her to survive.
Well,
but I want to make sure that moment feels like, you're a formidable villain. I mean, anyway, I'm just kind of thinking about.
I think there's a lot. Here's the thing about this particular movie is, I don't know yet exactly what kind of villain we're dealing with.
Yeah,
because at the moment, the villain seems to be somewhere in between the singular objective of a Terminator and the complexity of the past relationship of Midnight Run. There's a bit of a need to almost foil this villain that you wouldn't necessarily need to do with the Terminator. You're just trying to escape the Terminator. And yet also, I don't know how much, again, it's like, what kind of relationship do we want there to be with this villain? I know we created this, cohort of like a demon special ops crew that come out and do bad things in the world, and I'm still down with that. But then I go, okay, well, if you have a crew of villains, and Zod being kind of the lead guy,
hence Zod of it all,
then that kind of the Superman 2 kind of a villain wants something that is selfish. And that's something that you see in a lot of villains that are more than just killing machines. There is a personal goal that the villain wants that is specific usually to their needs, or and that need might be revenge, that need might be even if it's just to get rich, to fulfill the brilliant I mean, one of the great villains, I believe, is Hans Gruber of Die Hard, and one of the things that I think goes even beyond the money for him, and what I find makes Alan Rickman's performance so great, is that Hans is such an egotistical narcissist that John's interference isn't just about the money. It's about you're fucking with my plan. Totally. And I had this planned to the microsecond. And my desire as the villain is to not just get the money, but I also want to fuck you because you fucked up. And then he also killed my friend.
Absolutely.
Part of it as well. But I mean, literally, from the moment he starts messing with them, it's God damn it.
Yeah, completely.
It's absolutely supposed to go And so his desire becomes personal. And that's what I was saying. It's personal. And so you either have the impersonal, which even though the Terminator was looking for her, it feels very impersonal. He's just doing a job. He was sent here by a computer.
He's been programmed. He is.
Right? He's a robot.
Yeah.
And then there's the personal. And Zod in Superman 2, who is Kal-El. Kal-El is the fucking son of the guy who sentenced him to the Phantom Zone.
Totally.
It is personal. Yes, he wants power. Yes, he's on Earth. La, la, la. No. This is personal.
Yeah.
And so I think, for the most part, unless I'm missing one, which I very well could be, 9 times out of 10. Well, okay, so the third villain, I guess, and I'm thinking like Mission Impossible style, Fast and even some of those movies do go personal, but Bond style villains, the Bond style villain wants to do something that is bad, usually again for selfish reasons, but not personal towards the protagonist, right?
Okay, yeah.
So again, it's like a desire versus a almost robotic need. There's one type of a villain that wants something, and there's one type of villain that just is like a force of nature, And in fact, in some movies, if you look at disaster movies, who's the villain in a disaster movie? Well, 9 times out of 10, the disaster is the villain in the disaster movie, and it is literally a force of nature that you are fighting against.
Sure. Can I throw out another part too that we're not discussing, which are again 2 iconic film villains, which are Darth Vader and Agent Smith.
Yes.
So both of those villains serve a larger framework, a larger organization, if you will, albeit the Empire in Star Wars and the machines in The Matrix, an oppressive force of which I am, for all intents and purposes, a general within that organization. You know, Darth Vader being, you know, the right hand of the Emperor, and Smith being, you know, one of these agents. And their motives don't feel...
They're not emotional at the beginning.
At the beginning.
But they turn emotional during the course of the movie.
Yes. So again, I think that's the other part of it too. Is you know, and again, that may come to the Hans Gruber of it all. It wasn't meant to be an emotional thing. You know, and all of those villains are incredibly...
It becomes personal.
Yes, it becomes personal. But they're all incredibly smart, intelligent people who have plans about the way things are meant to be going, and the hero starts fucking with those plans. Right. And then it gets more and more and more frustrating for the villain. But at one point, it's like, I'm just going to fucking kill this guy. You know?
I think the challenge with our movie, though, is that there actually is no fucking with my plans. And there also is a villain that doesn't feel at the moment like a force of nature either. So not only do you have a combination of, I mean, you really do have more Zod, which is at the moment anyway, I have a personal grudge against you. But the problem is, again, with this particular construct that we have, what does Zod really want?
Mm-hmm.
Is our Zod, that we're calling him,
I know,
is our guy following orders? Is he the general that we've talked about, who is out here to make sure that the Antichrist comes to fruition and that hell can come to earth?
Mm-hmm.
And then when he discovers that actually Charlize is there, then it becomes personal. Possibly.
That feels instinctually like the right version, and also I'm open to hearing other things as well. You know,
yeah. I mean, the other thing is the only other versions are that either his whole goal the whole time is to get Charlize, and that the Antichrist thing is secondary, or a reason that he was able to come
I've been sent here to take out Charlize. I lean towards the first version. As we've said in the constructing of this world thus far, the demons this has been their plan for a long time.
Yeah, right.
And this thing is now starting to move. The plan for millennia that we've been pulling strings behind the scenes with humankind for tempus immemoria is now coming to fruition, and we're almost there. And we come to make sure this being is going to be ready and ours and protected. And we arrive. I like the way that we reintroduce him at the moment through this mirror. Feels fucking really creepy and savage and dark. Unlike something out of a horror movie, it feels like it's something out of Hellraiser. You know, it really does. Right. And then arrives and is like, what the fuck? You know, and actually we need that scene. We need this. I can't remember if we wrote it down in the outline of them arriving back at the boyfriend's house, at Sam's house, and going, this is where she's meant to be. She's not there. And then we realize that he's right on their tail. It was one of the scenes that we discussed.
We haven't gotten there yet.
We haven't gotten there yet. Yeah. It's why it's in this section called episode 35, Escalating Obstacles.
Yes.
Anyway, but you know, the way you described it, the words used just then, a force of nature. You know, I really want to feel scared by this dude. I do feel a little bit
is he, I guess, just to be clear,
yeah.
Are we scared by him because he's a force of nature? Are we scared by him because he is the brilliant architect of, you know, whatever is he I mean, what's interesting
are we scared because he's smart? Are we scared because he's ruthless? Are we scared because he knows the hero?
I mean, look,
or is
there's a version
of these things?
Smith, Darth Vader, those are interesting comps because they're both semi a force of nature because they are seemingly unstoppable.
Yes.
But they are also calculating.
Absolutely right.
The difference between them and the Terminator.
Completely.
Vader
has a tracker put on the Millennium Falcon and purposely lets them escape. Smith has recruited Cypher and takes him out for a steak dinner. You know?
Right. So I think the thing is, and you just gave two very good examples of how they showed their smartness and their calculatedness.
Yes.
What I don't know yet, and we're not there because these are Act 2 moments.
Yes.
I don't know how we see this guy be calculating. I could understand how we would just see him be a force of nature. He's a demon after all.
I mean, I've seen him melt through a mirror and kill a man just by,
right.
Yes.
But what is his calculation in terms of how is he not just an unstoppable force, but also someone who, when it becomes personal, uses tactics
completely
to get what they want.
Yes. Or even, for example, in this moment where he comes to Sam's house and the boyfriend's just there, and does a little interrogation-y torture on him, brutal and ruthless, and then when that doesn't yield results, goes, okay, here's what we need to do, blank. Now I haven't got that blank, but I think that is part of it. It's interesting because the Terminator is actually very fucking smart in one sense. It knows, oh, I hear on the answering machine where this person is. I'm going to go and find that spot. I'm going to find where Sarah Connor's mother lives and go and kill her and pretend to be her.
Right.
There is more than just,
Yeah, at times.
In that sense. Yeah.
And then at times he doesn't seem very smart. So it's a bit of a conflict in that movie.
Yeah.
Let me just walk through fire so my entire skin can burn off, and now I'm just an exoskeleton. Instead of run.
The truck got blown up. He didn't have it.
But he could have run. He could have run through the fire. Instead, he just walks like as slow as you could possibly walk. Because
that's not my memory of it, but anyway. But I hear what you're saying. But I'm just saying, like, even in those movies, when they are, and again, like even in Aliens, they must have turned off the power. Turned off the power, they're animals, and they go, well, there's something more going on here, they're not just animals, there's something else at play here, even in that you go, oh man, it's so anyway. But yeah, I think that's it. I think it's finding just a few of these moments to go, he's a force of nature, and what makes him so dangerous is that he's smart. It's Hans Gruber. Hans Gruber fucking kills that guy in cold fucking blood. You go, this is not someone to be trifled with, and yet he's masterminded this whole thing. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So
what is that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, I think there must be aspects of being able to firstly figure out how to find, ultimately it's going to be Charlize or Sam, perhaps. I think it's going to be when we do, what are we going to do to make Charlize give up? Like, is it something about he gets to her family first? Not trying to get, but like, is there something whereby he goes and threatens the boyfriend and the kid? I'm trying to get you to give up, Sam.
I think, I put the title of this episode as Escalating Obstacles because I do, obviously that's what Act 2 needs to be.
Yeah.
And I think that when you look at some of these villains that we're talking about, it's like the obstacles get harder because they start taking it personally, because they start to use more tactics instead
Yeah, sure.
of just their brute strength and brute force.
Right.
So what do we think we could, in theory, like do it again through these like they are, and this is also a bit of a challenge, by the way. Our heroes aren't trying to stop the bad guys.
No.
They're
the only way they're trying to
trying
stop the bad guys is by saving the good guy.
Yes, well, yeah, they have a goal, and their goal, if they complete their goal, it will stop the bad guys, but it won't kill them. They could, in theory, they could complete their goal, and the demons could still show up right at their doorstep and kill them.
Totally. Yes.
Like, which is a whole other complication that we need to figure out. So,
completely,
because there's going to end up needing to be not just we get to the place whereby Sam can be cured and we're all good.
Yeah.
It's going to be, we get to the place where Sam can be cured. Oh, and by the way, the demons are going to show up. Oh, and by the way, they will kill us.
Yeah.
They're still going to do that.
Yes. That's it's in theory very interesting, isn't it?
So and we also have the FBI that we're bringing into this story.
Yeah.
So it's like Zod and his two remaining lieutenants.
Yeah.
I want to see them get more dangerous or create bigger obstacles moving forward. So like if they were going to take the family hostage, I don't know that I would want that in 2.1.
Yeah, I agree. I'm thinking about.
I don't know that that's it seems like too big of an obstacle.
I agree. It feels like that's almost the darkest moment style.
Right. And yet we're also talking about potentially them getting Sam, which I think we've kind of gone back and forth on the structure of that.
Well, is there something interesting? We just play with that moment just for a second, because I think there's a way actually to do both, which I think is interesting. Mm-hmm. Hear me out on this. We are close to getting where we need to go and be, and bad version, the phone rings, and we have your family, and I need you to make a choice, Charlize, between either Sam or your family, and it's like the most fucking difficult decision that she would ever have to fucking make. Because on one side, it's the lives of her family. And yet if she gives Sam up, they will die. It's like either way, her family's going to die. And she's unable to make the decision. We don't actually make her make it. Sam makes the decision. She goes and gives herself up. And then it's like, oh, fuck, no, we've got to go. No, we've lost Sam. Like, is there a way of somehow combining that moment? I don't know, just popping into my head as you were discussing it. I know that's 2.2 darkest moment stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's like giving her Sophie's choice, basically.
It's like giving her Sophie's choice, yes.
But also, Sam is turning.
This is true.
So Sam could have gotten to such a dark place whereby she escapes on her own.
Perhaps.
And goes to the demon.
Yes. Yes.
That's another possibility.
Yeah. I think part of me goes that in 2.1, we have one moment with Zod and his crew doing a little bit of tortury / interrogation and getting on the trail. And then we kind of leave them until the midpoint. And then they again, maybe that's too far, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's not much time. Because we're already into, at this point, we've escaped the house, we've gone to the used car lot, we've gotten our exposition, Sam is on board, we drive away from the used car lot. We were going to cut now to like the FBI getting involved. They track down Charlize's car. They're the ones that know where Charlize lives. We were going to have them show up interrogating Charlize's family while Charlize actually goes to the bookshop. And then there was going to be a potential shootout of some kind with the FBI in the bookshop. So I mean, we've got a lot of spinning wheels here.
Moving parts, yeah.
Where, I mean, Zod and his crew were just a really huge obstacle for them. They barely made it out with Sam.
Yeah.
But they did. Then Zod needs to regroup.
Yes.
What is he going to use? I mean, I think that's the one scene that I would see, which is the "I'm coming for you."
Yes.
We're still on your trail.
We're still on your trail.
Found the blank. You know, I
Totally.
know, you know, what is the thing that tells him that she's even in college? They haven't been able to find her all these years.
Yeah.
How are they going to find her now? It's not like they don't have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They haven't. Yeah, there is new. It's not like, oh, it's Charlize. Oh, I know exactly where she lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she escaped.
Yeah.
So what would he believe? I mean, he knows Charlize. She's known her for, you know, multiple centuries.
Yeah.
Or millennia.
Sure. Yeah.
And then here's the other thing that we need to actually have a beat of, which is interesting as well. I want to see his, if we're going to make this personal, if we're going to make him this kind of conniving villain, we got to have a reaction to the fact that Charlize is even there.
We do. Now,
that could be in the fight. It could be as simple as that.
Yeah.
But
there is a deep history here.
Holy shit.
It's Obi-Wan and Vader.
Yes.
You know,
what?
Fuck of all people. Yeah.
100 years? It's been 100 years.
Right. And you're
now you're working with a demon hunter. Right. And I've continued to be a demon. So I actually know this guy's a demon hunter because maybe he's even killed a few of my buddies.
Yeah.
You know, like, in fact, that's actually really interesting. If Zod has a history with Hank as well.
That's interesting.
Now I've got a history. Now I actually have a personal connection to all three of our heroes. Sam is the one that I'm after. Charlize is the one who betrayed me. And Hank is the one who's killed other demons.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes him really interesting. But we need the scene in 2.1, or actually it's probably at the end of Act 1, in that climactic moment where he's like, oh, no, and maybe he's excited by it, or he's pissed by it, or he's freaked out by it. But I think the excited part actually makes him more scary, which is, oh, this is perfect.
Yeah, great.
Three birds with one stone.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah.
I couldn't have asked for, like, is it my birthday?
Yeah.
You know, it's that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wonderful. I get you, and you. My lucky.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. They escape. She got away from him again.
Yeah.
And this time, the stakes of her getting away aren't just that he won't see her again and that he'll get in trouble from his big boss daddy, Lucy.
Yeah.
The stakes are the Antichrist.
Yeah.
Does he know what she's going to do? Does he know that there's a way to even cure this? Because
perhaps not.
I don't know.
I don't know.
And that's the thing. It's like because I get the FBI showing up at her house, and that does give me a new, different obstacle. I like that now we're back there and that we have a human obstacle and not a demon obstacle.
Yeah.
Cool. But like you said, we always have to feel the tension of Zod, the true force of nature. Coming. He's coming. He's coming. Do they, for example, and this is the Jason Voorhees version of him. They go back inside a mirror in the apartment just as the cops storm in.
Oh, I like that.
And then they're back in the demon zone, and we don't need to see them or be with them until they come back out again, and they have a plan of some kind that they've formed in the demon zone.
That's really interesting. As you were pitching that, I was seeing another something too for later on, which is, and I haven't got the situation fully mapped out, but it's along the lines of the FBI are at the midpoint, gunfight, and one of these FBI agents is stood beside a mirror, and suddenly he's grabbed from within the mirror, and then out comes on. You know what it is? It's almost a little bit like, it's like the policeman and then the agents in the Matrix.
Yes.
Like, you're like, oh no, the police are there.
The police.
Yeah, in that particular version, it's that. But you go, oh no, the police are there. Oh, but now the agents are here. You know.
That's cool. Like, as if somehow from the demon zone they're able to track her better.
I haven't got the answer to how they're putting this puzzle together.
Well, they figured out where Sam was, so they knew she was in. They knew where she was based on her demonic levels of energy.
Yeah.
So there is potentially a way for them to find her again. Like,
yep.
If it was in the demon realm, I'd believe it more than in the human realm.
Yes,
and I don't need to see it. That's the thing.
Right.
I don't need to know how Jason just happens to show the fuck up right behind you again when he's disappeared the last time.
I guess my logic question, putting my logic hat on for a second, is if I knew where Sam was, why didn't I come out of the mirror in the bathroom first? Why did I come out in the mirror in a BDSM club? Unless I just wanted to party.
Well, I don't know that that's necessarily possible.
Okay.
We chose the BDSM club because it was a place of
hedonistic, darkness,
evil, basically. Not evil, you know. People can have BDSM and not be bad person.
It's fine.
But
we'll know.
But here's the thing, and it's not a bad question that you're asking. But is there, for example, a way to the more she turns, the easier, the more demonic, the more the mark of Cain forms, the more of a demon she becomes, and the easier it will be for her to.
I could buy that. I could buy that. It's about
she has the mark, but not fully, so they showed up in Portland.
Got it.
You know,
right?
So there is something interesting about the. I mean, I like them showing up with the FBI standoff. There's something interesting, too, about them getting into it with the cops.
Yes, there is.
Well.
Yeah, there is.
And that kind of ends up being the end of our cop story, or not.
Or not.
Depending on what
one dude can survive.
Yeah.
I
mean, there's actually something fascinating, even, although I don't know how it works, so maybe it's just dumb.
What are you going to say there?
Like, if the FBI, if our lead FBI agent, if our Tommy Lee Jones happens to somehow capture Zod, and but then Zod somehow is able to use the two-way mirror in the interrogation room to escape.
That's pretty fun.
It's a cool visual.
That's pretty.
And they're right up close to the mirror. They're on the other side. And then he just goes right in. Yeah.
It's a really cool visual. It's a really cool visual. You're like, oh, fuck.
And there's nothing to say that handcuffs couldn't keep Zod from breaking. I mean, we don't know. He's not. We don't know how strong he is. He's, they're strong.
I mean, we've seen him in the opening get thrown
through handcuffs.
I don't know. It's not. It's. I mean, if he was. Yeah, if he was really hurt by Charlie,
somebody tase him 10 times.
Yeah, totally.
He won't go down at first. He's coming. He keeps coming.
Yeah.
And then finally he drops and who the fuck is this guy?
Right.
And then he's in the fucking interrogation room and our FBI guy is going, who are you? And he's like, I'm Zod. And he's like, yeah, right.
What from Superman?
Seriously?
Pull the other one.
I've seen 2 versions of you, dude.
Which one? Are we going Michael Shannon or are we going Terrence Stamp?
Exactly. And if you're going Michael Shannon, I don't know, we've got issues because the real Zod is Terrence Stamp. Right?
We've run out of time though, but we've had a very good conversation.
Our obstacles.
And actually, it was a very good conversation because I feel like it was something that wasn't really fully developed. In fact, interestingly, on our chat earlier on today, it was a really good conversation because actually what happens is that when you fully energize your villain, it really adds energy to your story.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, how are they going to deal with this?
Look, I've always loved the idea that your bad guy can, in theory, come out of any mirror, anywhere, anytime.
Fucking scary.
It's scary as fuck. We talked about this at some point. Like, I wanted to do a horror movie about like Freddy Krueger in mirrors. You know,
totally right. Exactly.
And so if that's like what we do, and we don't have to see the planning, but rather he just shows up and he's like, and when he's there, he goes to his 2 lieutenants. All right, let's go.
Yeah.
And then they've got it figured out somehow. But that it's like, you don't know, like they're in the bathroom somewhere and you're like, are they gonna fucking come through this mirror?
Yeah, totally.
Or aren't they?
Yeah.
Know? And then like,
I always there's a moment in Prince of Darkness. They have this mirror that opens up into hell. And this thing starts to kind of come out of it and they interact. It's really cool, actually. So there's something in there.
Is there something cool about her house and how we've talked about before when she had her own apartment that she had to cover up the mirrors?
Yeah.
Is there something cool about like the fact that they have no mirrors and that it's like they like, did the daughter like sneak a mirror in or something? Like, I don't know.
Maybe,
like,
or they could only have very small mirrors or something.
Is there a way that it's like a weird thing of hers, like a mental thing that the boyfriend deals with, that she has like a, like, you know, she's
yeah, that's interesting. Well, let's figure out mirrors around.
It's like it's like a phobia, or, you know, she's concocted some excuse, but the reality is because that's the only way Zod could potentially find her.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. We'll talk about that next time. Good stuff today. Really good. We'll note some of this down, I think, tomorrow. Shall we just do that now quickly, just so that we've got it done? Maybe should we do that off camera?
Yeah, that's fine. All right. Great. Thanks, everybody.
See you next time.
But hey, just an announcement real quick, though. We are going to have another interview this week. I'm super excited. We are going to have our mentor, actually, our writing mentor and phenomenal screenwriter, Matthew Sand, is going to come on our podcast to talk about his process. And that is going to be Thursday.
Yes.
At
2 p.m. Or is it earlier?
It's Thursday afternoon. I think it might be 3 p.m.
Okay.
But we'll figure that out. And we'll make sure to post a pre-podcast event thing on our platforms. But yay, Matthew's awesome. Can't wait to interview him on here. And we'll see you all tomorrow.
See ya. Bye.